Youthful dreams. The rolling hills of Walheim. Werther's eyes sparkled with excitement as he gazed out at the rolling hills of Walheim, his heart swelling with a sense of possibility. The quaint town, nestled in the heart of Germany, was known for its picturesque landscapes and awe-inspiring vistas, the perfect inspiration for a young artist like Werther. And with a spring in his step, he made his way through the town's charming streets, taking in the sights and sounds of his new surroundings. As he walked, Werther's mind wandered to the series of fortunate events that had brought him to this place. A chance encounter with a wealthy patron, impressed by his artwork, had led to an invitation to spend the summer in Walheim. The opportunity was too good to pass up, a chance to escape the confines of his small village and immerse himself in the beauty of nature. The town's tranquility was a balm to Werther's creative soul. He felt his imagination stirring, responding to the gentle rustle of leaves and the soft chirping of birds. Every step revealed a new delight, a burst of colorful wildflowers, a babbling brook, or a majestic oak tree standing sentinel over the landscape. Walheim was a feast for the senses, and Werther was determined to capture its essence on canvas. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the town, Werther felt a sense of contentment wash over him. He knew that he had made the right decision in coming to Walheim. This was where he was meant to be. The youthful dreams that had driven him thus far were on the cusp of becoming a reality, and Werther was ready to seize the opportunity with both hands. In summary, Werther's arrival in Walheim marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one filled with promise and creative possibility. As he settled into his new surroundings, he was poised to unleash his full artistic potential, inspired by the beauty and tranquility of this idyllic town. Summer of Love. The fateful encounter as the warm summer sun shone brightly over the rolling hills of Walheim. Werther's arrival in the picturesque village marked the beginning of a season of love, passion, and heartbreak. It was here that he would meet the beautiful and captivating Lot, a chance encounter that would change the course of his life forever. The setting Walheim, with its lush green fields, sparkling streams, and rustic charm, provided the perfect backdrop for Werther's romantic escapades. The gentle rustling of the trees, the sweet songs of the birds, and the soft whispers of the wind all conspired to create an atmosphere of tranquility and intimacy. It was as if the very essence of the village was alive, pulsing with a rhythm that resonated deeply with Werther's sensitive soul. The meeting Lot, with her golden locks, bright blue eyes, and radiant smile, was the epitome of beauty and innocence. Werther, immediately smitten, was drawn to her like a moth to flame. Their first meeting, a chance encounter at a rural gathering, left him breathless and bewitched. As they exchanged playful banter, Werther's heart skipped a beat, and he knew, in that instant, that he was irretrievably lost in the whirlpool of love. The consequences as the summer wore on, Werther's infatuation with Lot only deepened. His every waking thought was consumed by visions of her lovely face, her playful laughter, and her gentle touch. But alas, their love was doomed from the start. Lot, already promised to another, could never fully reciprocate Werther's ardent affections. The knowledge, however, did little to deter Werther from his all-consuming passion. As the seasons changed, Werther's heart would break, and his world would shatter into 1,000 pieces. In summary, Werther's fateful encounter with Lot in the idyllic village of Walheim marked the beginning of a tumultuous romance that would leave him shattered and heartbroken. As the summer of love drew to a close, Werther's passionate escapades would ultimately lead to his downfall. Melancholy and longing. The turmoil of unrequited love. Werther's heart was a battleground, torn asunder by the conflicting desires of his soul. On one hand, he was deeply infatuated with Lot, the charming and kind daughter of the local bailiff. Her sparkling eyes and gentle touch had captivated him, and he couldn't help but feel an intense longing for her presence. Yet, on the other hand, he was painfully aware that his love was doomed from the start. Lot was engaged to another man, Albert, a stable and sensible suitor who offered her a secure future. As Werther struggled to reconcile his emotions, he became increasingly withdrawn and melancholic. He found solace in nature, wandering the rolling hills and forests surrounding Walheim. But even the serenity of the natural world couldn't calm the tempest raging within him. He poured his heart out onto the pages of his journal, scribbling feverish letters to Lot that he knew he could never send. Werther's inner turmoil was further complicated by his existential crisis. He felt suffocated by the stifling conventions of society, which seemed to value propriety over passion and individuality. He yearned for authenticity, for the freedom to follow his heart and live life on his own terms. But in a world that prized order and conformity, he felt like an outcast, a stranger in a strange land. As the days turned into weeks, Werther's melancholy deepened, threatening to consume him whole. He knew he couldn't continue down this path indefinitely, but he was powerless to resist the siren's call of his own desires. And so, he remained suspended in a state of anguished limbo, torn between the longing for an unattainable love and the crushing weight of his own mortality. Summary: Werther's unrequited love for Lot and his sense of disconnection from the world around him have plunged him into a deep melancholy. As he struggles to reconcile his emotions, he becomes increasingly withdrawn and conflicted, torn between the desire to follow his heart and the need to conform to societal expectations. Escape to the countryside. The lure of solitude. Werther's decision to escape to the countryside was motivated by a desire to escape the emotional turmoil that had been plaguing him. He hoped that the peace and tranquility of rural life would provide a balm to his wounded soul, allowing him to heal and find solace. Instead, he found himself succumbing to the very despair he had sought to flee. The initial days were idyllic, with Werther immersing himself in the simple pleasures of country living. He spent hours wandering through the rolling hills, breathing in the fresh air, and watching the sunset over the fields. The silence was a welcome respite from the constant din of city life, and for a while it seemed to wash away his troubles. However, as the days turned into weeks, Werther began to feel the crushing weight of his isolation. The silence that had once been a comfort now felt oppressive, a constant reminder of his loneliness. He found himself retreating into his own world, plagued by dark thoughts and morbid reflections. The countryside, once a source of solace, had become a prison, trapping him in his own misery. Werther's experience is a poignant reminder that running from our problems is not always the solution. Sometimes we need to confront our demons head-on, rather than trying to escape them. The countryside, with its peaceful facade, can be a misleading haven, hiding the darkness that lurks within. In summary, Werther's attempt to escape to the countryside highlights the dangers of avoidance and the importance of confronting our emotional pain. While solitude can be a healing balm, it can also lead to further despair if not balanced with self-reflection and honest confrontation. The darkening of the soul. The descent into darkness, the unraveling of reason, as Werther's days blended into an endless expanse of despair, his once vibrant soul began to wither, like a flower deprived of sunlight. The world around him, once full of promise and hope, grew increasingly distorted, reflecting the turmoil brewing within. His mental health, once a resilience he took for granted, began to fray, thread by thread, as the weight of his emotions bore down upon him. Loss of purpose. The unmooring of identity. Werther's sense of purpose, once rooted in his art and his relationships, began to disintegrate. The pursuit of creativity, once a solace in a passion, now felt hollow and unfulfilling. His artistic expression, once a reflection of his inner world, grew stilted and forced. The blank canvas, once a canvas of possibility, now stared back at him, a mocking reminder of his creative impotence. As his art suffered, so too did his relationships. Friends and loved ones, once a source of comfort and support, now seemed distant and uncaring. The erosion of Werther's sense of purpose was not limited to his art. His daily routine, once a series of meaningful actions, devolved into a listless sequence of habits. Days blended together, indistinguishable from one another, as he struggled to find motivation in the mundane tasks that had once brought him joy. The simplest of pleasures, a walk in the woods, a conversation with a friend, a good book, now felt like chores, devoid of purpose or pleasure. The crescendo of emotions, the overwhelming tides of despair, as Werther's sense of purpose unraveled, his emotions grew more turbulent. Despair, once a distant hum, swelled to a deafening roar. Each day brought a new torrent of feelings, each one more overwhelming than the last. The weight of his sorrow, once containable, now felt crushing, like a physical force that threatened to consume him whole. Werther's moods, once relatively stable, now oscillated wildly. One moment he was irrationally euphoric, convinced that a solution to his problems was just around the corner. The next, he was plunged into the depths of despair, convinced that all was lost. The whiplash of these emotional reversals left him reeling, gasping for air in a sea of uncertainty. The noose of isolation, the self-imposed exile. As Werther's emotional turmoil intensified, he began to withdraw from the world. Social gatherings, once a source of comfort and connection, now felt like torture. Conversations, once effortless and enjoyable, now felt like strained, awkward silences. The faces of loved ones, once warm and welcoming, now seemed distant, even hostile. Werther's isolation was not just physical, it was also emotional. He felt disconnected from the world, as if he was trapped behind a pane of glass, unable to reach out or be reached. His relationships, once a source of strength and support, now felt like a distant memory, a reminder of what he had lost. The gathering storm, the deterioration of reason. As Werther's mental health continued to deteriorate, his grip on reality began to slip. His thoughts, once rational and coherent, grew increasingly disjointed and fragmented. His perception of the world, once clear and distinct, grew distorted and hallucinatory. The darkness that had been gathering on the horizon finally closed in, like a shroud, around Werther's fragile soul. His descent into madness had begun, a journey from which there would be no return. In summary, Werther's increasing sense of desperation, as his mental health begins to deteriorate, marks a turning point in his journey. As his sense of purpose, emotions, and relationships unravel, he becomes increasingly disconnected from the world and himself. The noose of isolation tightens, and the gathering storm of madness closes in, threatening to consume him whole. The fatal encounter. The fateful meeting. It was a warm summer afternoon when Werther, still reeling from his unrequited love for Lot, decided to take a stroll through the picturesque countryside. As he wandered along the winding path, lost in thought, he suddenly stumbled upon a figure he had never seen before. The stranger, tall and handsome, with piercing blue eyes and a confident stride, was none other than Albert, Lot's fiancé. The encounter was brief, but the consequences would be far-reaching and devastating. Werther, still grappling with his own emotions, felt an instant sense of unease and resentment towards Albert. He couldn't help but notice the way Albert seemed to radiate confidence and contentment, qualities that Werther himself desperately yearned for. And their initial conversation was cordial, with Albert extending an invitation to Werther to visit them at their estate. However, as they parted ways, Werther couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that had settled in the pit of his stomach. He began to wonder if he had been foolish to think he had a chance with Lot, and whether Albert's presence would only serve to drive them further apart. As Werther reflected on the encounter, he couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between himself and Albert. While Albert exuded a sense of stability and maturity, Werther felt like a restless, emotional storm torn apart by his own desires and insecurities. This realization only added to his growing sense of despair as he realized that he was no match for the calm, collected Albert. In the days that followed, Werther found himself becoming increasingly withdrawn and isolated, unable to shake off the feeling that fate had dealt him a cruel hand. The encounter with Albert had brought to the surface all his deepest fears and insecurities, forcing him to confront the harsh reality of his own emotional turmoil. As the darkness closed in around him, Werther couldn't help but wonder if he would ever find a way to escape the prison of his own making. Summary: the fateful encounter between Werther and Albert sets in motion a chain of events that would have devastating consequences for all parties involved. Werther's jealousy and resentment towards Albert would only intensify his emotional turmoil, leading him further down the path of despair and destruction. Descent into madness. The fraying edges of sanity as the days blended together, Werther's grip on reality began to slip. The once rational and introspective young man was now consumed by an abyss of despair, his thoughts a jumbled mess of anxiety and desperation. His behavior became increasingly erratic, marked by reckless decisions and impulsive outbursts. The villagers, who had once regarded him with such admiration and affection, now whispered among themselves about the poor, troubled soul who had lost his way. The catalyst for this downward spiral was Werther's all-consuming love for Lot. Her rejection had unleashed a maelstrom of emotions within him, which he struggled to contain. His letters, once filled with eloquent prose and poetic observations, now resembled the ramblings of a madman. He wrote of the turmoils that ravaged his soul, of the darkness that threatened to engulf him at any moment. His words were a cry for help, a desperate plea to be saved from the abyss that was slowly devouring him. One fateful evening, Werther's friends, Wilhelm and Albert, received a disturbing letter from him, filled with incoherent ramblings and wild accusations. They were shocked and alarmed by the tone, which seemed to veer wildly between melancholy and hysteria. It was as if Werther was desperately clinging to the fraying edges of sanity, his fingers slipping with each passing moment. In this darkest of hours, Werther's friends realized that their dear companion was beyond their reach, lost in a labyrinth of his own making. They could only stand by, helpless, as the vortex of madness drew him ever closer, threatening to consume him whole. Summary: Werther's downward spiral accelerates, marked by erratic behavior and reckless decisions. His all-consuming love for Lot has unleashed a torrent of emotions, which he struggles to contain. As his grip on reality falters, his friends are left to watch in horror, powerless to stop his descent into madness. Tragic conclusion. Tragic conclusion, the torment of unrequited love. As Werther's story unfolds, it becomes increasingly clear that his all-consuming passion for Lot will be his downfall. The innocent and ethereal beauty, bound to another by the ties of matrimony, is the object of Werther's obsessive desires. The chasm between his ardent longings and the harsh reality of her unavailability grows wider with each passing day, generating a tempest of emotions that ultimately prove catastrophic. The initial flutter in Werther's chest upon beholding Lot's radiant smile blossoms into an unrelenting fervor that slowly devours his every waking thought. He is consumed by an insatiable hunger for her affection, and the realization that it can never be fully satiated drives him to the brink of madness. His existence becomes a never-ending torment, a perpetual oscillation between fleeting moments of euphoria and crushing despair. The futility of attempted escape, in a desperate bid to extricate himself from the abyss of his own desires, Werther flees to the countryside, seeking solace in the peaceful rhythms of rural life. He becomes enchanted with the rustic charm of the surrounds, allowing himself to be seduced by the promise of a simpler, more carefree existence. However, This idyllic interlude proves to be nothing more than a brief respite from the turmoil that churns within him. The memories of Lot linger, haunting his every step, and he finds himself helpless against the overpowering force of his own emotions. The passing of time only serves to intensify his longing, until the ache in his heart becomes a constant, gnawing presence that threatens to consume him whole. The descent into darkness, as the weight of his unrequited love begins to bear down upon him, Werther's behavior becomes increasingly erratic and self-destructive. His once luminous spirit, now shrouded in despair, begins to disintegrate under the crushing burden of his passions. He becomes mired in a morass of desperation, his thoughts churning with a madness that slowly but inexorably gains the upper hand. In a final, doomed attempt to reconcile his irreconcilable desires, Werther resolves to make one last, desperate plea to Lot. The meeting, far from bringing the solace he so desperately craves, serves only to heighten his anguish, and he is left to confront the brutal reality of his situation. The tragic demise of a tortured soul. In the aftermath of this devastating encounter, Werther's world begins to disintegrate. His once vibrant imagination, the wellspring of his artistic genius, is reduced to a barren wasteland devoid of hope or inspiration. His physical form, ravaged by the ceaseless turmoil that rages within, begins to weaken, his vital energies slowly ebbing away. The tragic conclusion of Werther's story is both heartbreaking and inevitable. His all-consuming passion, unchecked and unrelenting, ultimately proves to be the instrument of his own destruction. As the shadows of despair close in around him, Werther succumbs to the crushing weight of his own desires, his brilliant, star-crossed life extinguished in a blaze of unrequited love. Summary: Werther's tragic conclusion serves as a poignant reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked passion. His story, a testament to the destructive power of love, highlights the importance of emotional balance and the need for self-awareness in the face of overwhelming desire. And as we reflect on the tumultuous journey of this brilliant, tortured soul, we are forced to confront the darkest aspects of our own human nature and the terrible price that must be paid when passion is allowed to reign supreme. Epilogue. As the curtain falls on Werther's tumultuous life, we are left to ponder the lessons gleaned from his ill-fated love affair with Lot. It is a poignant reminder that the human experience is replete with contradictions. We are drawn to the flames that ultimately consume us, and we embark on journeys that guarantee heritage. Werther's tale is one of unbridled passion, a testament to the destructive power of love. His all-consuming desire for Lot drove him to abandon reason, surrendering to the whims of his heart. In doing so, he lost sight of the world around him, neglecting the devastation he wrought upon those closest to him. This serves as a stark reminder that love, when unchecked, can become an instrument of self-destruction. Yet amidst the ruin, we find glimpses of redemption. Werther's encounters with Lot's fiancé Albert and his own confidant, Wilhelm, demonstrate the significance of nurturing relationships built on mutual respect and trust. These bonds, though fraught with their own challenges, ultimately provided Werther with a sense of belonging and purpose. In the end, Werther's story serves as a poignant cautionary tale. His trajectory from exuberant idealism to tragic despair is a stark reminder of the perils of unchecked emotions. As we reflect on his life, we are compelled to confront the boundaries we must establish in our own hearts, lest we succumb to the same pitfalls. In conclusion, Werther's doomed love affair offers a poignant reflection on the human experience. We must strive to balance passion with reason, lest we risk losing ourselves in the tumult.